You're listening to Mr. Allard's Neighborhood. Small town feel with big time ideas. After all, you are entitled to Brad's opinion. Here's your host, Brad Allard.
Well, we are starting off a little earlier this week than normal. Apparently, Josh and Taylor have a very packed Monday, so I was able to accommodate it because I'm just that kind of guy. What can I say, huh? How you doing this morning, Josh?
Fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. Another great week ahead.
Another great week.
Well,
definitely undercaffeinated, but we're getting
yes,
there.
I heard that. But so I'll be drinking my coffee during the show, like a big shot. But anyway, did you recover from losing that hour? I got the extra hour of sleep. I always like fall back. Spring forward, I feel I've been robbed. But
Oh, yeah, no, the spring's always the worst.
yeah. You know, my wife hates the clock change because now it's getting dark about, 5:45, 6 o'clock. I have no problem with it, but that's okay. Anyway, we're talking about a couple of things in particular. We're going to talk about the Texas Constitution and what some of the provisions mean. Some of them, are fairly non-controversial and whatnot. And some of them, you need to know about. Now, the early voting has already taken place, but the other voting, it'll be tomorrow, the main voting. I'm sure that Josh has already voted. Am I right? Okay, I thought so. Anyway, they'll have about maybe 6 or 7% turnout on this because it's just not. It's these kind of elections are not really high profile and all this other business. But not only that, but a great number of these provisions already exist in law, and so we're not really talking about a radical change. Many of these propositions, if they are passed, which they almost always are, they won't really have any noticeable effect on what you're doing because there you go, got the last one. Because the fact is that a lot of these are already in law. The problem that I have with this whole process is that once you put it in the Constitution, it's much more difficult to change. And in effect, it hamstrings future legislatures from having alternatives, particularly in the area of revenue enhancement. Now, that is a foul word or a pair of words, I guess, for a lot of people. But the economy of Texas is doing really well right now, comparatively speaking. But it may not always. And you basically, we're telling our government in the future, these possibilities to try to solve situations will not be available to you. So anyway, that's where I come from on some of these. Now I'm not going to go over all 17 because most of them really, like I said, don't apply to y'all, apply to me, or they're not really something that's very controversial. I'm going to pick about 5 of them, I think, that maybe 6, that I think deserve a little attention. The latter half of the show, I'm going to give my 2 cents on the shutdown, and it's a nuanced view, to say the least. When I say a nuanced view, I'm saying it's not one side good, the other side bad, like you see in a lot of the media, particularly the social media. There's a lot to be said about both sides and how they're conducting themselves in this situation. Now, but let's go through the sponsors, and I want to also make my usual caveat here. These are my opinions, not necessarily theirs. You want to know what their opinions are, you can ask them. But they make this possible for us to have these kind of discussions, and I think they need to be recognized. Thank you, Otto, at our place. We'll be seeing you Thursday morning, or at least Ryan, your son, who runs the joint. It's always a great breakfast, always a great experience. They know what we want. The waitress we have is almost like this is our particular waitress, and she comes in and you'll have this, and you'll have that, and you'll have that, and it's kind of nice to have that hometown kind of feel. Also, Gina's Pizza, a great place to do business, great place to get a pizza. Last night they had Susie and her husband Woodrow on the mics, and I wasn't able to go to it last night, but I saw some of the clips, and they just do really, really good work. Woodrow can really play. Susie can play and sing too, and it's a great experience on Sunday nights. They also have karaoke on Wednesday nights, and then they have the Chess Club. I bet that's a party on Tuesday nights. All right. And if you go get a pizza there, at the Chess Club, you won't get rooked. Get it? There we go. Okay. All right.
Find the button.
Yeah. Okay. That was a bad one. Yes, I know. All right. Thank you also to my friend John Williams over at Old Pro Roofing, 817-734-2756. Get the roof inspected before the weather gets bad, and it's a free inspection. And he does all over the DFW area, not just Burleson, but they are a Burleson-based company. Their headquarters is over in Old Town, and you want to do business with home folks. I mean, every time we have a bad weather spell, we get a lot of guys coming through the neighborhood trying to get roof jobs. And I get it. They're making a living. But you want to deal with somebody that 6 months from now you can call and that you can trust. And you know that their reputation is sterling. So 817-734-2756. Also, my friend Jeff Kelly, he'll be on tomorrow. We're going to talk about real estate. We're going to talk about interest rates. We're going to talk about home buying all over the county. He does business all over the county, not just in Burleson. In fact, he does a lot of business in Godley and Joshua these days. So call him at 817-781-0546. He has several houses to show, and they're very nice. I mean, he puts them on this page. I share them with y'all, and it's some very nice houses. 817-781-0546 or Jeff at jeffkellyrealty.com. He's with the Wethington Agency. Again, you're dealing with home folks here, which is always a good thing. The Wethington Agency is also in Old Town, so it's a good place to do business. And my friend Tiffany, you should have your magazine by now. I know next month they do the nonprofits, which is always a great issue, but you should have your magazine. She mails them out the last day of the month. Usually you get them the first or the second day. So what's today, the third? Yeah, you should have it. Local Life magazine goes to 30,000 homes. Also, it's available on a lot of retail outlets, so it gets a lot of looks. You give her a holler, give Tiffany Jane a holler, and you'll find out what she could do for you there. Also, my friend Al Warner over at Bass Printing, over here in the hub. He's another local guy. Bass Printing can give you 1,000 business cards, $65, and that's a pretty good deal. And also 250 trifold brochures for $199. That's a good deal. I used him back in January for my mailers, and I need to reorder some cards. And that's the good thing about doing business with the same guy. He didn't have to redesign it. He already has it in the bullpen, so to speak. And so I can say, Al, I need 100 cards or 1,000 cards. Boom, there you are. So it's free shipping, fast and reliable. 817-616-8761 or bassprinting.com. He can handle all your business for you, so give him a holler. And I think we don't have more nonprofits. Yeah, we do. I'll just do it towards the end. Yeah, we do.
Want to go with that right now?
Yeah, let's do it right now. Why not? All right. Harvest House Brunch starts at 10 o'clock this Thursday, 10 o'clock. 11:30, 10 to 11:30. Do it right, dummy. 10 o'clock to 11:30 a.m. at Pathway Church. Use the QR code to register. There'll be an ask at the end, but there's no charge to come. It's just a nice thing. And part of what I'm going to talk about definitely deals with the Harvest House, about food pantries. Okay, I'm going to give you an assignment, guys, at the end of it, because things are getting serious at the food pantry. So I'll save that for that portion of the show. Okay, let's talk about the amendments briefly, I suppose. The thing about the Texas Constitution, it's written in such a restrictive way that anytime we want to change something that normally could be handled by other states or by the federal government just through legislative action, has to have an amendment to the Constitution. That's why we do this every 2 years. And we have anywhere from a dozen to 17 like we do this time. I think the record was 22 about 2 years or 4 years ago. The problem with the Texas Constitution, it's so restrictive that the government can't really do certain things without having to amend the Constitution, that in any other state, it would just be a regular law passed by the legislative process. Now, this is a result of our Reconstruction experience. We were so abused, as we saw it, by the carpetbagging Yankees that we aren't going to have this happen again. And so when Texas got control of its own government again in 1875, they started writing a new constitution, and they were going to make dang sure that never happened again. What just happened to them? What had just happened to them is they had a very expansive governor named Davis that basically just abused the state badly and left the state in a lot of debt. And they said, we're not going to let this happen again. We're going to make sure our governors and our legislatures never had the power to do what they did to us during Reconstruction. Now, I didn't say that clearly, but we did not want another episode of a government that was going to abuse the people. And so we wrote it in such a restrictive manner that they really made it too tight. And that's one reason why, since it was ratified in 1876, we've had nearly 600 amendments to the Constitution. And most of these amendments of the Constitution are not something that affects all Texans equally or universally. For example, Proposition 1, capital needs for the Texas State Technical College System. Now, TSTC down in Waco is a great institution. They need more money. They need more infrastructure. They need more updates on that technology. Why can't we just pass a bill and say, here it is? No, we can't do it because the Constitution doesn't let us. And so they want to create an $850 million infrastructure fund for this. Now, and again, in any other situation, a legislature could just do this, but no, we have to amend the Constitution to create a specific fund for TSTC so they can upgrade their technologies. Now, TSTC is a great institution, and what really makes it interesting is of all the public institutions, it's the only one that their funding is based on the results and performances of their graduates. In other words, they get funding based on how well and how often they place their graduates in paying jobs. And so that's one of the best institutions the state has at the public education level. And I've had several students over the years that went down to TSTC and got degrees, technical degrees in so many different areas. One time my wife and I toured it when she was also at Burleson at the time, as BISD, and we want to be able to know what we're talking about. And so we had a tour of the place, and it's very impressive. This was about, I'd say about 2007. But this is a great example. Why can't the government just pass the fund? Well, they can't, because that's the way the Constitution works. And so we have to amend the Constitution to create this special fund, which I hope you have voted for and you will vote for tomorrow if you haven't. Also, let's see some others here. Proposition 3 has gotten some attention, denial of bail under certain circumstances. In other words, they would allow judges basically to deny bail. It's not a mandate that the bail is denied, but basically it would allow the judge to have the ability to deny bail in certain situations. Let me see what would be listed in this amendment. Charges of murder, capital murder, aggravated assault if they cause serious bodily injury, or use certain weapons like firearms or knives, aggravated kidnapping, aggravated robbery, aggravated sexual assault, indecency with a child, trafficking of persons, or continuous trafficking of persons. Now, let's be very clear. Judges have the ability to deny bail, but what this does is it broadens the categories in which they'll have the ability to do it. Right now, there's only a few restricted categories in which a judge can deny bail. This would broaden those categories greatly. So basically, a lot of people find bail to be controversial because it seems to impact the poor more often than it does anybody else. The other side of the coin is that because some of these restrictions are such that you're putting people back on the street that don't need to be there. So I am personally in favor of this. Now, again, it's not a mandate that they don't have bail. It's up to the judge's discretion. And is this person a flight risk? Is this person a threat to society? He'll have the ability, or she'll have the ability to keep them behind bars as opposed to having potential more damages done. So that's one that I do support. I know it's controversial for some, but the thing about it is you see enough of these stories or people that have been bonded out and continue to cause mayhem. That's a real problem. Now, let me take a side note here. None of these are passed through the House and the Senate to propose to us as a people without a 2/3 majority in each house, okay? You need 2/3 of the House and 2/3 of the Senate to get this on the ballot. In the Senate, the Texas Republicans have enough to do it all by themselves, but not in the House. For them to do this, they're going to need about up to 22, I believe the count was, 22 Democrats to agree. So it is much more bipartisan. None of these things I'm talking about here got here strictly by Republican maneuvering. It had to have Democrat buy-in. At least a significant minority of the Democrats in the House had to buy into these amendments to make it work. So when I talk about denial of bail and all this other stuff, this is not something that's straight out of the MAGA playbook or anything like that. Again, about a quarter of the Democratic... let me put it this way. I'm going to try to do my math in my head real quick. There's about 65, I believe, Democrats in the House. They're going to need about 22 to 23 of them to agree to these things for it even to be on the ballot. So it is a bipartisan thing. And so if people say those darn Republicans are denying people bail, well, there's a lot of Democrats doing the same. Okay? So let's just be clear. And most of the amendments that passed through the Texas Senate did so on a bipartisan basis. So there's only a couple that I saw that really had almost no Democrat buy-in. Almost all the others had some Democrat votes for it. So these are fairly bipartisan. Also, directing sales tax revenue for the Texas Water Fund. Again, we need this badly. They want to create a fund of $1 billion to upgrade a lot of the water infrastructure systems and try to create more reservoirs and things of that nature. We need this very much so. Why can't we just do it? Well, I've already explained that, I think. But still, this is one of those things that we need to have done. I wish our government could have the ability to do this without having to amend the Constitution and have the people vote on it. Now, again, I don't see any of these failing because there's no opposition to these bills. Who's going to oppose the Texas Water Fund? Most of the people that vote in these elections have a vested interest in them, okay? And so we're not talking about like there's any organized opposition. There's been very few amendments over the last 20 years I've seen in which there actually has been organized opposition to at least one or two of the amendments. The last one I saw was when we banned in the Constitution personal income tax, and there was some opposition to that, but that was 2017, I think. And so, if you haven't seen much of this in the news, it's because you don't have the inundation on the airwaves about voting for or against it, because these are all going to pass. I can tell you that right now. I'm not saying you don't need to vote, but I'm just saying there is no opposition to a lot of these. Let's go on to another one. Number 8, prohibition of death taxes. That's basically estate taxes. Again, this already is in law. We don't have estate taxes in Texas, but this puts it in the Constitution. Now, am I in favor of that? Sure, but I'm in favor of it being law, not a constitutional amendment. Why? Because, again, 20 years from now, we don't want to have to go through this, have to amend the Constitution again to allow this. I don't like estate taxes very much, to tell you the truth, but when you have a situation where revenue enhancement is imperative to maintain just the basic standards, you need to have all tools in the arsenal. But this takes that one permanently out. But again, death taxes don't exist in this state. It just basically ties the hand of future legislatures. It would be prohibiting taxes levied on estate transfers, inheritances, and gifts in state code. Now, the federal code's different, so it won't have any impact on that at all. Now, this is a couple of them here that come up that really have a lot of attention. That is the increased homestead exemption. It would go up from $100,000 to $140,000, which for an average homeowner is about, what they say here, $484. Now, in Burleson, well, let me start again. The average home value in the state of Texas overall is around $200,000. In Burleson, it's around $380,000, but Jeff will tell us more about it tomorrow. And we're going to talk about these particular amendments and what it means for Burleson owners. So, you can do it accordingly. And I got my tax bill on Saturday, and I noticed it was a little bit higher. And so, that's something that's going to be controversial, because I've already seen posts on Facebook, hey, why do my taxes go up so high, and this kind of thing. There's a lot of reasons for that. Increased valuations, things of that nature. The rates didn't go up, but the valuations did. And so there's going to be a lot of conversation and controversy about that. And I'm going to get the mayor on hopefully very soon. We're going to talk about this because I have a few open dates normally in November, and I try to give people in city council a little space because it's holiday season, whatever else. But I'm going to see what we got with them. I'll see what we got later in the month. But anyway, the point is this would increase the homestead exemption to $140,000. Again, I'll say this to the point of monotony. I wish that this could just be done by law instead of by Constitution, because in the future, if they want to change this, they're going to have to amend the Constitution again. I don't have really an objection to raising it to $140,000. I just don't like it putting them writing it in stone, because at a future date, who knows what's going to be happening. And we want to be able to have our legislature to have all the ability to handle whatever crisis comes up in the future. But that being said, I'll vote for it, because not just because I want the $484, but we are running a lot of surpluses in this state. We have a rainy day fund that's at its maximum. The Constitution has a specified percentage that you can't exceed on the rainy day fund, and we've exceeded it. And so what that means is either we spend that money or give it away in the form of tax rebates. And this is how the government currently decides to get rid of that excess, is by lowering taxes. And that's okay, that's fine. But it's not like, well, why don't we just keep it and save it? Well, we can't. The Constitution doesn't allow us to just continually save. We can only save up to a certain percentage, and then there you go. We have to either give it back or spend it. And so the Democrats tend to spend it, Republicans tend to give it back. It depends on how you look at things, which is better, depending on what they're spending it on, things of that nature. Also, where's the other one here? Here it is, number 13. No, that 13 is about the amendment for the homestead exemption. I'm sorry, I got the numbers. Number 11 is the one that would increase it up to $200,000 for elderly, for 65 and older. Okay, so again, let's get the numbers right. 13 will increase your homestead exemption if you're under 65. If you're over 65, it goes from 140 to 200,000. Again, since the average home value for a lot of most areas of Texas is 200,000. This effectively will end property taxes for people over 65 in that particular category. Now, if your home is worth more than that, you're not going to get a total decrease, but $200,000 exemption, that's quite a bit. You have a home that's, I don't know, $300,000, 2/3 of it's going to be exempt from taxation. So yeah, this one will pass. And so if you're 65 or older, you're going to see a significant reduction in your property taxes next year. Now, I don't know if these are retroactive. The last time we did this in 2023, when we went from 100 to 140,000. No, wait, I'm sorry, I got it wrong. We went from 40,000 to 100,000. That's it. 40,000 homestead exemption to 100,000. It was retroactive to the beginning of that year. And so some people got a pretty significant cut in their escrow or got a check back from their mortgage company, things of that nature. So this one here on number 11 would increase the homestead exemption for people over $200,000 to $200,000. That's pretty good. I'm thinking of like my mother, she's got a home in Corsicana and it's worth more than $200,000, but about half of it would be tax exempt, a little more than half. And, my mother's now a widow, and I don't mind the fact that she's going to have hopefully a little more latitude in her budget. And again, people say, well, what about the money? We're losing out on the money. We have the money, okay? We have it in the rainy day funds. Now, whether the government will spend it or not, that's a whole other question, okay? That one, I don't think these will answer, but I'm just saying the fact that we're not shortchanging the state government. We have the money. Now, as far as the locals and things of that, again, that's something I think I would rather refer to let Mr. Mayor, Mr. Fletcher answer, or a couple other people, maybe Adam Russell and Larry Scott. They in particular seem to have a pretty good idea about these things. How it impacts the city, how it will impact the school, I'm not sure. But the point is that the money will be there. Whether we spend it or not is another political question altogether. Now, here's another one that's got, I guess, some people excited. It's a parental rights amendment. It reads, the constitutional right affirming that parents are the primary decision makers for their children. Now, if approved, which it will be, I'm quite sure, the amendment would codify in the Constitution hundreds of years of case law that gives the rights of Texas parents to raise their children without government interference. Again, all we're really doing is taking what's already in the code and putting it in the Constitution. Now, what difference does that make to y'all personally? I don't think you'll even notice it. All right, because like I said, the law in Texas is pretty clear about parents being the primary decision maker. All we're doing is taking law, making it into an amendment. But still, it would become the first state to add parental rights to its founding document, according to the advocates. The critics are concerned that it would take legal focus away from children's rights. Okay. Again, I have not seen any organized opposition, and with the rise of homeschooling and co-ops and alternative educational methods and the rise of the voucher system, I am quite sure this will pass with no problems whatsoever. Number 16, citizenship voting amendment. The constitutional amendment clarifying that a voter must be a United States citizen. That's already the law in this state. It would now be part of our Constitution. People say, well, isn't that kind of redundant? Don't you have to be a citizen to vote in any state? And the answer is no. All right, I'll take a couple other examples. In California, in the state elections, in state and local elections, residents can vote. For example, in Stockton, California, if you live in the city of Stockton and you're over 18, you can vote, whether or not you're a United States citizen or not. or citizen of California even. Same thing with like San Bernardino. You can vote for school board as long as you're a resident of the school district, not necessarily a citizen. Now they can't, the non-citizens can't vote for like senator and members of Congress or the president, in the federal elections, but they can in some areas vote in local elections. New York City tried to do this, and the state of New York shot it down, but don't be surprised whatsoever if and when that Mr. Mandami wins, that they're going to bring this up again, and he's going to win tomorrow. Hey, Josh, you been keeping up with that mayor's race in New York?
I have been.
Okay.
It's,
you
it's quite the interesting.
You got commentary,
dynamic.
or are you going to take the easy way out?
Oh, you know me.
Yeah.
Always taking the easy
Now,
way out.
you don't have an opinion on it. You big baby. Come on.
Nothing I want to share on the air.
Yeah, okay,
How about
fine. I'll share it on my opinion. I think he's going to find out just how hard it is to make some of these things happen. And do you agree with that?
That is a good point. I do think that a lot of the stuff he's been running on and promising, I do think is going to be a little bit more difficult than he realizes to get done, but that doesn't mean that it's impossible.
Well, it also means that there's a lot of people that have the wherewithal to move to Connecticut and they're already setting up businesses outside of New York. Most people think of the stock exchange as New York based. We're going to have one in Dallas in about a year. I mean, of significant size. We have local stock markets, but the Texas market, as they call it, is going to rival the New York Stock Exchange, and you're going to find companies that are going to list with them and move their operations to Texas, like a lot of companies already have. And so it's going to be very interesting to see how the Texas Exchange and the New York Stock Exchange compete with each other. It's we'll see what happens. I'm not sure exactly where that exchange is going to be. I've heard Las Colinas, but I'm not sure. So, is that all you're going to say about Mandani?
That's about all I got.
Jeez. What about free grocery stores? You like that, or subsidized grocery stores?
That's nice.
Nice, yeah. We'll see. Anyway, back to the parental rights thing. You have a great deal of rights in the state of Texas already, but this will be codified in the Constitution, and it'll be the first state to do so. So there you are. Speaking of politics, I'm sure Josh will pass on this one too about the shutdown. You have no opinion on that to air, right?
Nothing that I want on the internet.
Jeez, see, this is why, you're going to let me take all the heat, are you?
No, they're entitled to your opinion.
Okay, I'm fine. We have a video clip from the news, and it shows, it does highlight some of the issues involved in it. So let's run this, and then we'll respond to it. So, Josh, if you'd run that news clip.
The government shutdown hitting 1 month this morning, leaving nearly 42 million Americans who rely on food benefits without enough to eat.
We can't live in a country that's this wealthy and have people starving. It's just not okay at all.
The federal food assistance program, known as SNAP, runs out today, but the Trump administration may be forced to shift federal dollars around to pay for it. After a last-minute ruling from 2 federal judges who said the White House is required by law to use emergency funds. The president late Friday saying it would be his honor to provide the funding, instructing lawyers to clarify how we can legally fund SNAP as soon as possible. The administration had been claiming it legally could not use the contingency funds to pay SNAP benefits during the shutdown, even though they found a way to pay the troops.
I think that liberal judges weren't correct on this ruling. I think that our legal analysis is that we have to use the emergency money for emergencies.
The Trump administration has until Monday to respond to the court. Also today, the first day of open enrollment for the Affordable Care Act. Many Americans will see their rates for 2026 double or even triple because the ACA tax credits expire at the end of this year.
Americans have never seen a health care like this, the one that's about to begin Saturday. And Donald Trump is nowhere to be found.
What do you make of Democrats essentially keeping the government shut down for the Affordable Care Act, for health care policies?
I'm kind of on the fence. People are being affected daily because of the shutdown. However, if they don't stand now, they won't ever be able to stand up against this presidency.
Most Democrats are holding out their votes until Republicans negotiate a compromise, as millions of federal workers go without pay.
It's getting to the point to where we might actually have to go to the food bank.
Now, rather than concede to Democrats, President Trump is calling on his own party to change the long-standing 60-vote rule in the Senate required to pass most bills. So far, Republicans are pushing back. Peter?
Yep, Senator John Thune, the Republican leader, making that very clear. Julie Sirkin there in Florida. Julie, thank you.
Okay, there you go.
Thanks for watching. And don't forget, you can catch the...
All right. A lot to unpack there. First of all, I just want to mention about the filibuster. That would be a disaster if they get rid of it. What I find to be interesting about this filibuster is that in 2022, the Democrats tried to end the filibuster on the Voting Rights Act. And now they're using the filibuster to keep the government shut down. And that shows the typical hypocrisy that comes with politics, okay? Because they were going to change the Constitution to allow them to get, the 50 votes they needed in the Senate, plus then have Harris break the tie, and they could pass the Voting Rights Act. But Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema said, no, we're not going to do this because there's long-term implications, and so it failed. Now in 2022, the Democrats are saying, no, we need the filibuster to protect the people. So it's a great example of the hypocrisy. Now, I will give some of the Republicans a little bit of credit because they voted against it then and they vote against it now. Thune told Mr. Trump it's not going to happen. And even if they wanted to change the rule, there's going to be plenty of Republicans that would vote against it to keep it from becoming a rule change. So the filibuster is not going anywhere. And, a lot of people say, well, we don't need this. Well, I'm not going to get into an entire government lecture about it. I'm going to give my government class. But the short answer is the 60-vote rule was designed to maintain some sort of moderation in the Senate. And it really wasn't meant to be used like this. But it was designed to make sure that every bill at least had enough buy-in from the minority party that it could be at least seen as bipartisan. So there's that. Second of all, people want to know whose fault it is. And the media, and a lot of people in social media in particular, are blaming the Republicans. And I think a lot of that is historical memory, if you will, because the Republicans have always been on the side of shutting the government down. And the most notorious, if you will, would be in 2013 over this very issue. And this is what it's all about, Obamacare subsidies. Okay, and Ted Cruz led a filibuster, and, I've shown it in class where he ends up reading Dr. Seuss at 3 a.m., which is no joke. I got the video, and some of y'all may have seen it. But the point is that back then the Democrats were saying one thing, now they're saying another about the government shutdown. Government doesn't need to be shut down over Obamacare subsidies and all that, 2013. Now they do. Let's talk about those Obamacare subsidies specifically, okay? These are not the original subsidies that were passed in 2010 or enhanced in later Obamacare bills, okay? The ones that the Republicans are referring to specifically were created during COVID and passed at the very beginning of the Biden administration as part of a massive $1.8 trillion push of money to extend these benefits another couple of years, and enhanced benefits. They weren't just extending what was already there. They greatly increased it. They went from, I believe, if you're making 200% over the poverty level to be eligible now to 400%. In other words, a family of four who's making about $128,000, which is the level, qualifies for the subsidies. And this was done for COVID. And then in 2022, with the terribly named Inflation Reduction Act, these subsidies were extended to end of this year. The reason they weren't permanently extended is because Joe Manchin wouldn't vote for it. Permanently extended. Joe Manchin, I don't know how Kyrsten Sinema felt. I think she didn't care for it either, but it was mostly Joe Manchin said, I'm not going to vote for permanent extensions. So they compromised for 3 years. So the ending of these subsidies is not something that the Republicans took away back in July when they passed the equally badly named One Beautiful or Big Budget Bill, whatever they call it, One Big Beautiful Bill. That stupid name. Basically, they're just letting those enhanced subsidies run out. Okay, so again, the idea that the Republicans are taking away something really is just a way of phrasing it. They're just not extending what was extended in 2022. Had the Democrats were able to get through and get that, we wouldn't even be talking about this now, but they weren't able to get it. They only could get a 3-year extension because of Joe Manchin. Okay. And I think a lot of the Democrats, particularly after the midterms of 2022, thought Joe Biden was going to be reelected. And then, of course, that's a whole other conversation, about that. But they thought that to be reelected and they'd be able to extend it and all this other business. Well, obviously, that didn't work out that way. And so to say the Republicans are taking away the subsidies, basically what they're doing is they're not supporting the increased, enhanced subsidies. They're not taking all the subsidies away. They're just basically wanting to revert them back to they were prior to COVID. Now, that being said, is it worth the shutdown? There's other factors at work here besides just the politics of the bill itself. It's also the personal politics. Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in the House, cannot afford to cave because they personally will lose their positions in leadership if they do. Chuck Schumer is deathly afraid of an AOC primary challenge. And he also is afraid that the Democrats will take him out as leader of the Democrats if he caves. Because back in March, we went through this then, but we didn't get up to this point where it's shut down. But right before the shutdown, Schumer changes his mind, and 8 Democrats joined him, and they voted to continue the government till this point. And he took all sorts of abuse from the left on the social media and from donors and from the major left groups and whatever else. And he knows that he can't remain in position of authority in the Senate if he caves. He also knows that he'll be inviting a left-wing primary challenge in 2028, which he'll be 80 years old then. And it's almost universally assumed AOC will be making that challenge. And she's going to have the wind at her back, too, particularly when Mandami wins tomorrow. Hakeem Jeffries will be your Speaker of the House if the midterms go the Democrats' way next November, which, historically speaking, should happen. May not, but it's almost always, not 100%, but almost always where the minority party gains seats, and they don't have to gain like 4. And he will not be the Speaker of the House if he caves. And so a lot of what the American people are going through are really going through because of personal political ambitions and objectives by a handful of leadership in the Democrat Party. And that's, I hope by now, if you heard my show enough, that I'm not a reflexive Republican. I used to be much more Republican about 20 years ago, not so much anymore for a lot of reasons. But the truth is that this is primarily being run for political ambitions on the leadership of the Democrat side. Because they know if they cave, they're putting not only their personal leadership positions at risk, but also potential gains in the House and Senate from disaffected leftists in the Democrat Party or the more liberals in the Democrat Party. They think if they cave, they won't turn out next November and they won't gain their objective and things of that nature. What the Democrats are asking the Republicans to do is just totally politically illogical. The Republicans never have been in favor of Obamacare in the first place. And when Trump got into office, he had his opportunities to end the subsidies, and the Republicans could, and they didn't. Okay? They continued. Okay? Trump was promising to replace Obamacare with something better. Never happened, of course. And so the Republicans had their chance then, but they didn't do anything about it. But what they're opposing now is the increased, enhanced subsidies that began 4 years ago, or roughly 4 years ago. Not Obamacare itself, not the subsidies itself. Basically, they just want to go back to where it was prior to COVID. And for the Democrats to ask them, to demand from them what they're demanding of is just totally politically, it's impossible for the Republicans. They can't, if they cave on this deal and say, okay, we'll give you the subsidies and we'll extend them another 2 years or whatever else you want, they'll hear it from their right wing hard. And they know it. Everybody that's running in a primary, like John Cornyn and whatnot, if they cave on this, then they're going to get the same impact that the Democrats will get from their left. And that's the whole point of this, is that the wings of both parties are driving this. They're pushing the leadership of both parties into this impasse because the penalties for not maintaining this shutdown are too great for either side. If the Republicans cave, they're toast next year. If the Democrats cave, they're toast next year. And here we are. So people aren't getting paid. The food banks are running out. What can we do about it? Okay? I want to just sum up the political aspect of all of this, because really it's more important about the practical aspect of what's happening. Most people, when you look at the polls, blame both sides, and that's fine. And they deserve blame for being so incompetent at their jobs, both parties. But this never should have happened. But because of the control of both parties by the far wings of their party, here we are. Okay? People have asked me, who do I blame? I blame them both. I blame them both not just for this particular episode, but I blame them for being under such control of these wings that this is what results in. This is kind of governing we go through. Okay? So if you want to blame the Democrats for this or the Republicans for the shutdown, get after it. I mean, there's ammunition. I could sit across the table and argue both sides. Personally, I don't want to dodge the question like some on this podcast do. Yes, I'm looking at you, Josh. I personally think this was engineered by the Democrats, but it doesn't matter, really. It really doesn't, because here we are. People aren't getting paid. People's cars are getting repossessed. People are going delinquent on their mortgages. People are overdue on their bills. And the food banks are getting swamped. I'm in Sunday school yesterday, and there's about 3 people in that room that work at the Promises Food Bank, and they had a very busy week last week, and they expect to be inundated this week because those SNAP benefits aren't coming. Now, the thing is, a couple of judges ruled Friday afternoon that Trump has to spend these emergency funds, and he gets up there and he's trying to be the good guy and says, I'll be honored to pay for these, as the video showed. Yeah, well, whatever. But the point is that it's not like just flipping a switch and the money comes tomorrow. And even if it does come today or tomorrow, it's only going to last 2 weeks. Okay, this is not a permanent extension of SNAP. These are emergency funds, and they're going to run out very quickly. And so with the government shutdown, we may be going through this again about a week before Thanksgiving with food stamps being cut off. And that's just inconceivable to me as a country that we're going to go through this. Okay, so the food stamp issue may be, like I said, I don't know how quickly people are going to get their money. But I do know that the food banks are going to be swamped. And here's my assignment, vast listening audience. When you go to the store this week, get an extra bag of canned goods or whatever and take it by Promises or House of Hope here in Crowley or Harvest House or a neighbor that you know is in this situation. Whatever our government is and how bad it can be and all this, that doesn't mean the American people have to just take it. The American people can rise up and do what they need to do to solve their own problems and help people solve their problems. We can do what we can do. We may not be able to get a hold of Schumer or John Thune or anybody else that's involved in this shutdown and talk some sense into them. It doesn't matter. We can't sit on the sidelines and bitch when we got people in this community that are going hungry. You're shaking your head over there, huh? Amen?
Yeah, I got you.
You got the amen chorus going over here. Sometimes I just watch what he does and see, am I connecting with it? And he's like, tears. He's wiping the tears from his eyes. Anyway, no, but seriously, we can bellyache all we want on Facebook about it and blame who we want. Who doesn't matter. We need to step up as communities and solve these problems ourselves, because if we're waiting for the government to do it, we're going to be waiting a long time. And once this problem is resolved, we'll just move on to the next crisis with this band of nitwits. So my point with the American people, to the Burleson people and Crowley people and Joshua and anybody else that's listening to this, or if you're listening to out of town, I got a couple out of town listeners that told me they'd be listening to this show. It's time to step up. And if you're stepping up already, God bless you, step up again. Okay? And this is what, the American people excel in, is helping each other. We are not the sum of our government. The government is not reflective of the generosity of the American people and the decency of the American people. These fringes that dominate social media, these fringes that, you know, get their points across on mainstream media even, these fringes that get lackeys in government positions are not reflective of the American people. We are the American people. We solve this problem. And one way you do it is, if you're able to do so, pony up a little extra at the grocery store and drop by one of these food pantries. And while they're up there pulling their hair out and acting stupid, we're maintaining quality of life for our fellow citizens. And that's all I got to say about that. This will be on the radio tonight at 6 o'clock and 1 o'clock tomorrow on community radio. I hope you all listen to it. Need some listeners. Well, you know, it's really interesting about the radio station. Some days are pretty good, and some days are like, hello out there. You know, so I don't know why one day is different than the other, but I guess a lot of business people can say the same thing. All right. But you like jazz, Josh?
I do.
Well, I'm going to put some special shows. I'm not changing the format. I'm still doing 60s through 80s and maybe a couple of 90s songs that I found are okay. But I'm going to do some like special shows, and I do like jazz.
Ooh.
And also some standards like Sinatra and Dean Martin.
That's good.
Yeah, and you know, they'll be on like Friday evenings. Or
also writing down for like the Christmas season too.
I got some Christmas music loaded up for Christmas. I'm not a big on Christmas music, but I do like some of it.
Yeah, Christmas jazz always has a special place in my heart.
Yeah, little Bing, little Frank.
Yeah.
Little Judy Garland, whatever. Judy Garland has, I think we have an album of hers somewhere from, and that shows how old I am. But that's for Christmas. But I mean, on your typical day, it'll still be the normal format, but it's a bit like Friday night, my jazz night, or.
All right, I'll tune in for that.
Yeah, and to that. You mean you're not tuning in already?
I mean, I have been.
Okay,
sure
yeah,
especially there for that.
yeah. Okay, fine. Anyway, thanks for listening, guys. I appreciate the time. I hope this made sense. Again, remember our friends at the food pantries, and do what we can to get through this. Holiday season's coming. Next week, I have on, I believe, Elizabeth Becker from the House of Hope. Hopefully. We're not and still in this situation. I'm going to check the calendar. Yes, we do. And then on the 13th, next Thursday afternoon, I need to make sure we're clear on that. We got Josh YSD on, a couple of their heads of their departments are going to be there. So lots going on. Tomorrow, tune in for Jeff Kelly. We'll talk about real estate. We'll talk about the impact of these amendments and what they have on real estate. And we will see y'all tomorrow at noon. Noon tomorrow.
Noon. See you then.
All righty.